Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. I'm going to give a relatively quick talk about effective communication. When we first started Toastmasters, none of us knew what we were doing. We came in the first class and we kind of sat and we listened. Then, first day, we started working on our icebreaker speeches. We were introducing ourselves to everybody else. That speech, if you're joining, you are, that is going to be the hardest speech that you do. Why? Because you're talking about yourself. That doesn't make sense, does it? It should be your easiest speech. But thinking about what you've done, what you want to specifically talk about yourself, is difficult. That first step opens up a whole world of possibility to speaking, to understanding, and also to presenting yourself and your ideas. Now, that first speech was written out by some people, or some people put down notes. Other people just talk. Now, I find that writing down notes doesn't help me. So I would either have notes and look at them, or I could have nothing and just talk. This speech, I don't have notes for. I'm just going off of what I remember. So, after our icebreaker speech, we go on to give a second speech. Our second speech was on a topic of our choosing. Could be anything. I decided to give a speech on EVs, electric vehicles. That speech, I found, was when I really started to come up with my ideas, organize them well, and then have them come out in a format that was understandable, that was ordered. After that speech, we moved on to our third meeting with active listening. Active listening is important as well, because in order to understand somebody else, you need to be able to listen to what they're talking about. Not just hear what they're talking about, but also listen. That meeting, we had 5 minutes each. We would listen to the other person. We were partnered. We would listen to the other person. They would talk, and then we would switch. After that, we gave presentations on what the other person did over maybe the week or the previous day. After that meeting was a big gap because we were kind of all on vacation. We all went on trips. It was the summer. After that gap, we came back. We had another meeting, and now we're here. The week prior to this, we were at Roselli's house. Thank you. We practiced our speeches, and this is where it gives you a lot of time to think about what you want to talk about and to think about your format. So, with speeches, you want to make sure that you're moving around, engaging the audience. You want to pause so the audience has time to think about what you just said, to process that. Otherwise, if you go really fast, they can't really think about what you're talking about, and they really don't have any idea. Also, when you go quickly, you stutter, and you start to say, When you pause, you give yourself time to think, like I'm doing now. Doing that allows your audience to not only understand you better, but also it helps you, so you don't have to pause as much. Effective communication is not only about being better than the other person. It's about having an ongoing conversation between two people. To do that, you want to make sure that the other person understands what you're talking about. Effective communication also requires both people to be on the same level. That means that if somebody else knows a lot more than you, you can ask questions as long as you are genuinely interested. And if they are genuine questions, it will come out not as you are a lot lower than them, but they will want to help bring you up. If you are above the other person, feel free to explain things. They're not more stupid than you. They maybe just don't understand as much in that topic. Now that we've set this baseline, we can go on to a little bit more about speeches. During speeches, in order to engage the audience, you want to make sure that you are asking them questions instead of just giving them information to think about. Do any of you want an example?
Yes.
All right. So, if I say to you, what is the most common way that people like to make more horsepower in their cars? Anybody have an answer? Okay. This is why audience participation is also one of the more difficult things to do during a speech, because it doesn't always work out. Live demonstrations don't always work out. So I'll give you an example. The way people like to make more power in their cars is to increase the bore and the stroke of their engine. Now, who knows what that means? None of you. Why? Because I've explained it in a way that at a high level of people who understand cars. However, not everybody would understand cars. So here's a simpler way so that you can understand. The way an engine makes power is there is a controlled explosion that pushes a piston down. That is what generates the power. Now, if you increase the surface area of that piston to give the gas more area to push down on, that will create more power. Now, if you also increase the time that that gas has to push down on the piston, that also increases your power because you're using more of that energy. Now, this is a more simple way of explaining, just to increase the bore and stroke. You're increasing the surface area of the piston, and you're also increasing how far it moves. This is how a lot of people like to make more power. Now, effective communication, I'm going to use this term a lot, is being able to understand what somebody says and also understanding what you're saying yourself. If you don't understand what you're saying, nobody else does. So in order for effective communication to work, the other person has to understand, and you have to understand. During our second meeting, we also went over the parts of a speech. You had the beginning, you had the middle, and you had the end. The beginning and the middle are important. However, the end is what gives your speech that impact. The ending could end off with maybe a simple quote, a fact, or you could just end it with a good, strong ending to sum everything up. If you want a fact, I'll give you one. Nintendo has been around for longer than Sherlock Holmes has. Now, if you want a good conclusion to sum up the meeting, effective communication is nothing more than making sure the other person understands what you're saying. Final Toastmaster.